Tombow markers. They are loved by so many. Those that do calligraphy or hand letter artists, sketchbook artists, bullet journal artists, artists of all kinds love Tombow markers. But why? Hi, my name is Leah. If you're new here, hello and welcome. I'm an artist and creator here on YouTube that likes to share the joy of art and the magical healing capabilities of using art as a tool towards healing. And in today's video, I'm going to do a review of Tombow markers. And yes, I know there are thousands of reviews of Tombow markers out on YouTube and the internet. They're everywhere. But you'll find that most of those reviews are old. They're from when Tombows were really just starting to hit their stride in the creative world, even though that they have been around for a very long time. But they had this big boom of interest in them. And so those videos are a little out of date. It's 2025. I just noticed my shirt is on the table. Okay. Anyways, in today's video, what I'm going to do is go over what are Tombow markers, what are the alternative options to them, what are the features, capabilities, and I'm going to show you some pros, cons, and just like show you how I like to use them. So first up, let's take a look at the build of a Tombow marker. They are fairly long and thin, and they're dual-ended. So you'll have a brush tip end and a bullet tip end. So what's great about this is the fact that you can get different type of detailing and artwork line creations with these two ends. I would consider the Tombow the Tombow brush end to be a fairly stiff marker when you first purchase them. However, over time they do loosen up and become much softer when you press down on them. Up next, we're going to look at the comparable brands and see the differences in how the brush tips bend and the sizing of them. One marker that can be compared to the Tombow are the Ecoline brush pens. The main difference is this one here only has one end. Ecoline brushes are extremely juicy, so when you push down with the tip, you're going to get a lot of liquid that comes out in comparison to the Tombows. When comparing the Tombow to the Faber-Castell Goldfaber Aqua Dual marker, I would say these are very much comparable markers. They're built physically similar. They both have the dual tip end, but the main difference between these two is the fact that the Tombow has a bullet nib end, but the Faber-Castell has more of a fine tip end. These Faber-Castells are also quite juicy in comparison, but they don't have as many color options. Another marker type are the Faber-Castell's Pitt markers. Now this here is the Pitt Artist brush pen. It too, like the Ecoline, only has one end. The difference is, if I can get the lid open, is that they are very small brush tips in comparison to the Tombow, which you can see is much larger. If you want fine line detailing, these brush pens from Faber-Castell are perfect for that. Now, the Faber-Castell Pitt line also comes in their dual end marker, and you can see they are physically very different, especially when you're comparing them to the Tombows. The Tombow, I'd say, is kind of like an in-between of the two models. This one here has the brush tip end, which is very big, as well as a fine tip end. I just want to show you the size comparison when pressing down for these. What's great about Tombow markers is that they are a water-based marker, so they have no odor and can be dissolved with water to create interesting effects. One thing I want to note is, and you may even see it on camera, is that they do have a bit of ghosting depending on the paper that you're using, though most pages you can't see it. So I drew this. You can sort of see it because of the light, but it's not a huge amount. So if you're comparing these to something that you can get off of Amazon that are like Ohuhu markers, most of them are made with alcohol-based materials. So they're alcohol markers, which means that they severely goes through your paper. They bleed through. But with water-based markers like Tombow's, you have minimal to no bleed through. These are water soluble. The ink inside of them is more dye-based in color. Options come up to 108 colors that you can buy individually or as in sets, because they offer them in curated color sets as well. Now I'm going to paint on top of a already wet surface, just so you can get an idea as to how these markers perform on that. So dry to wet. And now, because it's been used on a wet surface, it's going to be a little diluted until you get to your full color. I want to just dive right into some of the cons of the Tombow brushes and not wait until the end of the video. So first up is the fact that the barrel of the actual marker here, you can physically see that because I use this one frequently, the paint dye material that they use to put their markings on here rubs off, like you just saw me scrape some of it off with my finger here, which means over time you can lose the color code number on the marker. And if you ever want to repurchase this marker and the code is gone, you might be scrambling to see what color it was by going to a store physically and having to hold it up to all the other colors that are in the store. But what if you don't have a local art supply store, like I don't here anymore? Our art supply store, gone. So I have to do all my ordering online. So if this marker was gone, this like code number here was gone, I would be lost. Which is why I highly recommend when you first get your markers, or if you have any at home already, swatch them, write down the color code, and save that piece of paper or those cards that you've made so that you can go back to it at a later date so you know which one you want to repurchase. I also want to point out the fact that this is not an accurate color for the markers. So the cap does not match the marker. And that can happen on nearly any of them. So actually that one looks a little close, but not all of them match. And I find that extremely frustrating because you'll be like, oh yeah, this is the exact color I want. And then you'll go and you'll draw and you're like, oh no, that wasn't the color I thought it would be. Which is another reason why I recommend swatching them out and having a reference to it so you can refer back to it, or pre-swatching before you get started in your creations. The next con that I want to point out is something that you may or may not encounter, and that is that they are not light fast, which means they will not stand up the test of time when exposed to light. They will fade. However, I was sitting outside in my backyard one day for an hour. I had created this little illustration / painting with my mixed media supplies. I had my Tombow markers, my colored pencils, and some of my gouache. I started out drawing out these lemons by using my favorite coral colored Tombow marker. You can see the color right here. However, this color is barely recognizable inside of this drawing because in the span of an hour of me sitting outside in a bright sunny day with direct sunlight, it faded immediately. I found it quite interesting actually, because I absolutely love using my Tombows in this sketchbook. It is one of my go-to art supplies that I use in here frequently. However, on that day, it just disappeared. At this point in time in the video, what I'm going to do is demonstrate how I like to use these markers with my mixed media supplies in my sketchbook, because this is how primarily I use my Tombows, and that is with other items. And I also want to go over all the reasons why I love these Tombows, and I'll continue to purchase them and buy more of them, because a color collection is never complete. So the first reason why I absolutely love these Tombows is the fact that they are dry. And you're probably thinking, huh? Dry? How can a marker be dry? Like, that's when they're scratchy and they create interesting textures. No. I'm referring to the fact that when in comparison to the Ecolines and the Goldfabers, which I had labeled as juicy, when you push down on the pen, you don't get this rush of fluid that comes out that makes it so that your stroke is darker or wetter, or when you go from like a nice to really wet to nice type of thing. And my reasoning for that is the fact that I'm an impatient human being. I like to layer and use other materials. That doesn't mean that they dry so quickly that you can't blend with water. As you can see on screen with the leaves that I'm doing, I'm drawing with my green and then I'm re-wetting it with some water and allowing the color to blend together as is. And I find it's most effective on mixed media paper and watercolor paper. If you're using something that's quite dry of a paper, like thin or super smooth, or just basically paper for sketching, you might not have the same flow and it might dry even quicker on that type of paper. So you want to test it out depending on the type of paper you prefer to use. But I like the fact that it's a quick drying type of fluid ink, watercolor material inside these markers, because I'm impatient. I want to layer on top with my neocolors. I want to layer on top with my colored pencils. And anyone who's ever done mixed media will know that a wet surface and colored pencils do not mix. You do not get the same type of bold lines that you normally would get on dry surfaces. The other reason why I absolutely love the Tombow is their color selection options. I feel like they have a color for everything. And I know 108 colors in comparison to, say, like a fancy brand like Copic that does their alcohol markers. It doesn't seem like a lot of colors, but it is 100 colors to choose from. That's a wide range of colors. And you also want to be a little bit careful with that, because I've gotten a couple colors that are so similar to one another that I'm like, oh, that's disappointing. But it does give you the option to, if you are more of a warm leaning artist, so you like to use warm colors, you have warm options of a pink, where if you also liked the cool tones, you can get a cooler version of the same kind of pink. You know what I mean? So there are a lot of options to choose from, and I just love that capability. I also really like how their availability is everywhere. No matter where I've gone or where I shop, Tombows are accessible and easy to get. So I know I currently don't have an art supply store that's easy to go to. I mean, there's a Michael's, but that's like a craft store. But you can still get Tombows at a Michael's. You can order them from your online art supply store. Most local art supply stores even carry them because they are a reliable brand. They've been around for a long time, and they're just that kind of accessible for purchasing. I also really like how these are a low pressure art material for me. I know that they're not light fast, so they won't survive being hung on the wall for a really long time, but they work amazing in sketchbooks, and I feel like there's this low pressure when I use them. Like, they're not extremely expensive art supplies. If I use them and run out of it, it doesn't feel bad. Or if I lose one, because I lose things, like I don't feel bad about that. Like sometimes when you buy high-end art supplies, you feel like you need to hoard it, but you shouldn't hoard them. Trust me, I've learned over the years, use them. But it has that low pressure feeling when I use them. So I don't mind being messy. I don't mind making ugly art with them. It's all about the enjoyment of creating when I use them. I also really like how they work well with other materials, like my neocolors, as you saw on camera just a second ago. I'm blending in the markers with neocolors and creating an interesting color effect because both of them are water soluble and they have their own ways of diluting, and it creates interesting looks. I used to have a pet peeve when it came to these Tombow markers because they are really thin and long, which means they didn't fit in basic pencil cases, and taking them was not easy for me. I would have to have more than one pencil case, but the Ultimate Pencil Case has solved that problem for me, and I just love how I can take them everywhere with me and use them no matter where I'm going. I also really love the fact that they are odorless, so I do not get triggered for migraines. It's safe for me to use it when I'm in doctor's office and waiting rooms, so it's not going to irritate anybody that's around me that might have extreme sensitivities as well. I really like how if I get the marker on my finger, like on my skin, it doesn't stain, it washes off. Now, before we get to the end of today's video, I just want to let you guys know that I do have a video comparing all watercolor markers that I currently own, and I'll leave a link to it in the description section below if you are interested in learning more about the other markers that I had mentioned in today's video. So, what are we thinking? Now that you've seen the Tombows, seen some cons, pros and cons, is this a marker that you're interested in trying? Do you think, yeah, you know what, maybe the hype is worth it, I should try these, or I should get out the ones that I currently have that I haven't touched in so long? What are your thoughts? How do you feel about these? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you have any questions about the Tombows, don't hesitate to ask me in the comment section below as well. If I have the answer and I can get to you in time, I will let you know and get back to you as soon as I can. All right, thank you so much everyone for watching this video. I really do hope it helps you on your journey to using art as a tool towards healing. Thank you so much for watching this, and until next time, stay magical.